We often think that it's always about progression, that it's this linear kind of narrative, that things are difficult, right? People struggle, people fight, people resist, and voila, everything falls into place. And that's often how we think about the civil rights movement. And granted, there are lots of reasons why we tell the story that way, because it's
Mhm.
certainly easier to digest. But in reality, the story is a lot more like ebbs and flows.
Mhm.
It's a lot more as, a story of wins and losses, and feeling like you have to go over it again and do it again and do it again some more when you thought it was done. I think for some people, they see this moment and it's like, oh, look what happened. We made some steps back, and this is terrible. What are we going to do? Well, it's not that we shouldn't recognize that it's terrible, or we shouldn't own our feelings of grief or disappointment or whatever it is that we're dealing with in the moment, but it's to recognize that it's actually part of the process,
Mhm.
that it is part of the process to have failure, that it
Mhm.
is part of the process to have bumps along the way, that it is part of the process to have a door shut in your face. And sometimes that has to happen before things change. And so when you look at Hamer's story, I'm amazed by this because as a historian looking back, I see the significance of Hamer's speech. It was so powerful, it was so moving, it was so influential. It catapulted her political career. But if you
Yeah.
take a look at her correspondence, her intimate correspondence with people, she saw that as the lowest point of her life. I mean, it's
Mhm.
quite interesting. She leaves Atlantic City, and for her, I mean, she tells someone at some point everything has hit rock bottom. She's not seeing hope. She's not seeing um, a moment of change. Because her speech is already interrupted, and she's not seeing that it could, in fact, make a difference. She saw failure. She failed. She saw that, she saw it as a failed exercise, and she sort of needed a moment to pick herself back up again. And I think about what that must have felt like, because she didn't have a crystal ball. She didn't realize that she was just around the corner to seeing some significant changes in terms of legislation. So I do think it matters, and it's instructive for this moment,
Mhm.
to be mindful of kind of the tug of war, the process of change, that it doesn't have to always be about moving forward. Sometimes you do take a step back in order to leap forward. And that's certainly my hope in this particular moment, is just thinking about organizing. I find that unfortunately it's so easy to allow differences, to get in the way. Let me be clear what I mean by differences. My attitude is, if we at least agree on the core essence of what my humanity, right, your humanity, we sort of agree, that we are fighting for human dignity as it pertains to all people. Like if we just agree on the basics, on the basics, there's a lot of room there. And so I see all kinds of possible collaborations with people. And I find that sometimes when we're in these political spaces, we take this hard line approach, and we say, well, if this person doesn't agree with me on this one issue, then I'm done, then we can't work together. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I'm not saying that you should not have values and you shouldn't have expectations, but I'm looking at all of these activists who are so different, right, in many ways, manage to figure out how to work together. Doesn't mean they don't have
Mhm.
disagreements, and you know um, that they don't at times actually fight among each other, but they still find a way to work together for the greater good. And I'm troubled by the way that the conversation, even in the last couple of months, hearing people who should all sort of be on the same side, get into this conversation. We're like, well, I disagree on this one thing, so I'm not going to talk to you, or I'm not going to work with you. And that's a failed, I think, um, point of view, quite frankly, because I think the power of the organizing tradition, and the kind of vision of Ella Baker, to allude, to go back to her, is how people who recognize what the stakes are,
Mhm.
and at least see that they are allies in the struggle. They don't have to agree on everything, but they are allies in the struggle, that they can work together. I have no interest in fighting my allies. I'll put it that way. And I think there's too much fighting that happens that, and you could disagree, but fighting to the point of this of rupture where you can't actually ever work together is an unfortunate, I think, reality that I'm seeing too much in
Mhm.
our political movements. And it has hurt us. Doesn't mean we can't recover, but it has
Right.
hurt us in different ways.
Right.
Scholars, we reflect oftentimes, um, the world in which we live. And if we
Mhm.
are not intentional, we're going to replicate the narratives that ultimately reinforce this point of view. And I am intentional
Mhm.
when it comes to rejecting these perceptions and saying when people say to me, well, no, there isn't material there, or you can't find it, or no, you can't tell a story of Black internationalism from the perspective of women in this period and working class folks, like, doesn't exist. And then to spend years of my life proving them wrong, right? I mean, it's just, it's my commitment to challenging those narratives, but unfortunately, they remain. I have to say, and we've gotten, as you pointed out, Dr. Scott, like, we've made a whole lot of progress, but I am still troubled, by the fact that to this day, people will send me manuscripts to review, and
Mhm.
I feel like, I might as well just write a template. Half the time I'm getting great books and I have to say there's no gender analysis. We're
Yeah.
women leaders, like, and pointing out just examples
You
that
could have
that
included it,
yes, it could have
right?
been included. It's
Like
actually
it's
quite, and
there.
yes. And sometimes I mean, I'm shocked, I'm shocked because we should know better,
Mhm.
but it's the default, right? I'm just gonna, it's the default. I'll focus on these key figures, and I won't, talk about anyone else. And so I'm constantly finding myself in a position where I'm pushing back, pushing back. But I think the answer has a lot to do with our society, the way we continue to view women,
Right.
right? We've broken out of a lot of expectations, but so many people still want us in the home, in the
Mhm.
kitchen, taking care of the kids. Nothing's wrong with any of that, but
Mhm.
we do a whole lot more. So
Mhm.
I think the scholarship is definitely constantly pushing back against these patriarchal, expectations, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate, but
And
yeah,
pushing back against what you noted as these assumptions about a
correct.
lack of intellectual
Yeah.
capability. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I know for me, the kind of work that I do and what personally has motivated me, what personally and through your personal experiences, through your own life's journey, has motivated you to take the course that you have taken in your research and your writing. And I hate to dwindle it down to research
Mm,
and writing because I also
mhm,
know that it's more than that research and writing journey. It is a personal journey when you are doing this. So why
mhm.
have you chosen the path that you've chosen?
That's a wonderful question. I always tell people that I had no intention of becoming a historian,
Oh,
which is, and people are surprised to hear that, but it is true. I, in fact, went to college uh, intending to become an attorney. I had
Mm,
already declared, pre-law major very quickly, and I had been involved in mock trial and, like, all of I had done internships at law firms, and I was checking all the boxes.
mm-hmm.
And I sat in a history class for one reason and one reason alone. I was told it is required to take a history class and you need to do it, so okay, I found one that was open and I sat in that class. Little did I know that my life would change dramatically,
Mhm.
and because what happened is I sat in history class. This was actually a history of U.S. immigration history, was
Mm,
taught by Thomas Dublin,
mhm,
at Binghamton University. And I was amazed. First, amazed that I knew nothing. I thought that was interesting. I thought I was fairly well informed, but knew absolutely nothing. Learned a lot in that course. I was really captivated by the primary sources. Just had never encountered anything like it. To read texts from, an earlier time period, it was just all so new and fascinating. And I found myself loving the class so much so that I was putting more energy in that history class than in anything else. And it became a bit evident by the end of the semester that I had sort of, dwindled, further and further away from what I thought I was going to focus on. And so Professor Dublin said to me, well, take another history class.
oh,
And he encouraged me to do so. And I said, sure. Took another history class. By the end of that second class, I had dropped the pre-law major. I declared a history major. And my professors said to me, you know, you're good at this. You're a good writer. You're passionate about research, and you have all these skills. You should consider doing, you know, being a historian. And still wasn't sold on the idea because I didn't fully know what that would mean.
Mhm.
You know, for myself and my family, just there were so many questions. But they really helped. They guided me through the process. They encouraged me, and then I made the decision to pursue a PhD in history, and I've never looked back. But I will say one of
Mm.
the things that really stayed with me, you know, we've referenced the inspiration,
Yeah.
but as someone who came from a working class background, someone who, um, you know, I think really struggled with my confidence, thought little of myself, you know, because I was in a space where I was, you know, first generation college student. So like I had all these things going through my mind. I didn't fit in. I worried about what others thought of me. I couldn't afford the book, so I was embarrassed. You know, I just was going through all these things. And as I'm reading about these courageous men and women, um, it's like just a fire lit in me. And I started to feel like I told someone at a practical level, I started to feel like I could lift my head up with this
Hmm.
confidence. And it wasn't even my confidence, but it was just like, wow, like
Yes.
my ancestors are like impressive, you know, an impressive group of people. I mean, I was amazed by how the knowledge of the history made me feel better and made me think about myself as having this great potential that I could do
Yeah.
things and go places and you know and I could get degrees and I mean I just started dreaming and I'm just grateful to be able to have had the opportunity to study and now to be able to write the books, including some of the books that I remember thinking about at the time. Say, oh, I
Hmm.
wish there was a book on this, and now
Like,
I'm
I'll just write it.
now I'm writing the book.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's really an amazing experience. And I just tell people it's the power of knowledge,
Hmm.
truly, and also the power of mentoring. You know, kudos
Hmm.
to the professors, the teachers, the educators on the call, right? Those who are just, you know, working day after day. Sometimes it can feel like a thankless job, but honestly, the work you're doing means so much. And you know, you never know. You simply never know the way that you will inspire
Right.
someone to do all kinds of amazing things in the world. So I credit great mentors and who took the time to invest in me. And even at a practical level, I told someone recently, that's the last thing I'll say, which brought a smile to my face. One of my professors noticed that I was copying the books because I said I couldn't afford the books.
Hmm.
And so I would ask people in the class, can I borrow your book? And I would be in the library copying, copying, copying. And he caught wind of that. And he said, you need to come see me in my office hours. And I was like, oh no, like he's going to be like, why are you copying these books? And I was embarrassed. I showed up and he had a bag with all the books.
Well,
It was the most beautiful experience. And
wow.
he said, I have the books for you. So anyhow, I'm getting emotional, but wow, like I felt so seen and so appreciated. And I just, wow, who does that? And but I look back and I was like, wow, I couldn't afford the books. The professor just handed me the books.
Mm.
Um, and I was able to pass that class. I was able to ace that class. You know, I just like that to me is amazing. And so like just today I think about what it means as an educator. I try, you know, I feel like I can't live up to the amazing folks who mentored me, but I try um to give back in the way they gave back to me. And you know, they gave to me just to really try to do the same and look for the students who I could just support and encourage in whatever way. So I hope that does something for the people who are on the call who might be, you know, struggling kind of
Yes.
with the work every day and not sure if it
Yes.
makes a difference. Wow, thank you so much.